Sandy Allnock here with part 2 to a video that I started over on the Simon Says Stamp channel. If you haven't seen that, there will be a link to it at the end. The airbrushing was all complete in the other video, so we're going to color the other parts, but I'm also going to repair a few bits on here. You can see where my mask was misplaced slightly when I did the airbrushing, so I can take a marker and fill in that orange. And also I'm going to go over the other parts that kind of bled into my image area. And since that's Copic marker, I can just blend them out just like I would with anything else that I make a bloop on. The first step on this I'm going to do quickly is a base coat over the entire image. I'm just going to lay in some basic greens, YG93, and I'll continue with some YG63. I'm separating each one of the greens a little bit so that they're not two objects next to each other. So the first one was the dinosaur on the left and the plants on the right, and some of the others will just be in areas opposite each other. That will help as I start creating different dinosaurs and leaves and things so that they don't all start looking like they're the same, but they can all be in a similar color family and kind of go together without actually causing any conflict between the image itself. So continuing to lay in that color. The dinosaur in the left, the first one that I did, I left some highlights on him. You don't have to do that. Not really sure why I did on that one and I didn't do it on the others, but you know, there you go. This color is an E84, and you notice it's an E, so it's in the earth tone family, but it does have a greenish cast to it, so I decided to use that in this one as one of the greens. The YR14 is one of the colors that was used in the airbrushing in the sky, so I want to lay a base coat of that down on the ground to just make it kind of work as a reflection of the sky. I'm going to layer a lot of colors over it and take out a lot of that oranginess, but I wanted to have at least a little bit of that laid in at the very beginning. Now I'm going to start laying in shadows. Instead of using colors for them, I'm going to be using my W series markers. That's going to mean I'm overlaying some gray color over top of each of the colors that I have. And this is going to mean that I can add some really strong dark shadows because it's nighttime out here in the lost world. And I can add the shadows in just the spots where I want them. And if I want to get really crazy with it, and I wouldn't recommend this unless you're comfortable with lots of dark shadows, I'm going to add some even darker W7 shadows. In a few spots. And I can smooth that out a little bit first with my W5. If you're more comfortable, you can do W5 and W3. Use your W5 as your dark. But I want it to be really, really nighttime. So I'm going to go over top of it now with my light color. And that's going to blend all of those colors together so that it brings all of that warm gray color back into being a brighter green color, even though it's got some really good strong shadows. Now I'm going to do the rest of the images at higher speed since you've just seen one of them colored at normal speed, and I'm going to use the same technique for each and every one of them, using the W5 to lay down the base shadow color, and then my really dark shadows with the W7 and blend them a little bit more with the W5, and then go over top of that with the same base color. On this particular dinosaur, you can see that I left the left-hand side of that long neck with a little lighter color. The reason for that, and you can do that on any image where you might have some bounced light or some backlighting, the sunshine is back there in the horizon, as well as the light could be bouncing off the ground up to his neck. It just adds a little extra dimension. You can certainly start that shadow directly at the bottom of his neck and no one will be the wiser, but it just adds a little something to it. So I'm adding my leaf shadows at basically the base of each leaf or in the center of the leaves, that sort of thing. And, you know, blending out all of my images with those greens on top of them. As this develops, you can see that those shadows look like they go with the green. They don't look like the same color used across the entire image. There are times where using nice, dark, rich grays like this is not going to work on your image because it's going to make it look a little bit darker. It's going to be looking like nighttime. You can play with different types of grays based on whatever color you're using. If you're using bright colors, you might try a really light, cool gray on something. You can try matching cools with cools and warm colors with warms, and just play around with different types of things that could spark up your image a little bit without having to use a shadow in that color family. Now I need to add shadows underneath of them. The sun is coming from this center point, so I'm going to add shadows coming straight out. They're going to be long shadows, you know, those long shadows you see at night. And I'm just going right over top of the colors I've already got there. I can go in and fix things if I want and get more detailed with it, but for right now I'm just going to go over it real quickly so that the shadows come off of each one of these objects and cast them way out into the distance to emphasize the fact that this is a lot of late night sunshine. If you can call it late night sunshine, it's sunset, definite sunset here. And I want to add a little bit darker color as well, because that's not giving me enough of an anchor, but now I know where my lines are going to be, so I can add some real darks right at the base of each of those objects, because with shadows, right where the object is at, the darkest shadow is going to be right next to it, and then it softens out from there. I'll go back in. This is still with the W7 and W5 combination. And I'm just going to go over top of them and color them straight up to just blend that color, make it softer. Now I don't like that much orange. I don't like that much orange in the ground. I want it to be more of this duller color, so I'm taking a W3 and I'm just going to color right over top of it just to knock that color back so it's not so screamy bright. My last step there is going to be to add some texture to the ground. So I'm just doing some stippling and dots, which are going to add some texture. This is the W7 marker that I'm doing in the dark areas. And then I'll switch to my W5 in this lighter area, and that's going to dry back a good bit too, which will be really helpful. That needs to be knocked back even more, it's still too bright. There we go. Now the last bit of magic I'm going to add is going to be using the 0 marker. This is the colorless blender. It does not blend, just so you know, but it's going to allow me to add something that's going to end up looking like pebbles, because I can just go in with dots of the color, and I'm not making them really huge because I can always add more later. But if I hold the pen down too long, then I'm going to end up with way too big of a dot. So I'm holding it down for a second, and if I want to go in and make it bigger or whiter, I'll do that after it dries. I'm going to let it set for a second before I decide whether or not those particular dots are the size and shape and quantity and brightness that I want for the whole thing. So I'm just going over the entire ground, every bit of it, and putting in dots. You don't want these to be consistent. You want them to be different sizes and shapes and patterns. Don't make rows of them, because pebbles on the ground are never perfectly aligned. But this just adds a lot of extra detail to the whole scene. I can also add some brighter highlights to a few spots on the image using similar technique, just adding a little bit of the zero marker on the tops of everybody's heads, just so we get a nice little contrast. If you end up doing too much, just go back over it with the base color of that image again. But I'm just going to bring out my highlights with my zero marker. Could do a little bit on the trees, just on a few select leaves, and a little bit on the little baby's shell. And how about on Mama's back? And I did realize I forgot one whole group of leaves, so I'm going to go in and do them right now. And now that the card is complete, if you missed out on the video over on the Simon Says Stamp blog, I would highly recommend that you go see that one and check out the airbrushing there. Please leave me a comment in the doobly-doo and let me know what you think of this video. And subscribe if you have not already, and I will see you next week.